great to be with the team from Windsor, Connecticut, at the first UCC church. And I saw this amazing time-lapse video that Nicole, I think you posted on the website of the fabric installation that you did for Roll Down Justice. And I just had to talk to you all about the nitty-gritty of how you did that, of your teamwork. And so we're excited to spend a little bit of time with you today. So before I show that video, I just want to have you introduce yourselves and your role at the church. So would you start, Nicole?
Sure. Thanks. And it's just such a pleasure and honor to be asked to be part of this. So I'm Nicole Grant-Yonkman. I serve as the senior minister, and I've been at the church about 6 years.
Great. All right, Maureen.
My name is Maureen Sullivan. I kind of take over where Laurel and Nicole lead me in terms of execution. I have a storied history, but one of my prior careers was actually as a scenic artist in theater. So I totally appreciate your work, Marcia.
Perfect.
And I was a member of United Scenic Artists. I had tested into the New York, USA, and worked on Broadway and regional theater. I then went off to do my own contract painting for decorative wall finishes and murals and that kind of thing. So it's been an interesting cycle back, but it feels good to be able to use my background. It plays obviously very well into what we're trying to achieve in the sanctuary.
Absolutely. Well, that's so great. Laurel, would you introduce yourself?
Laurel Pepin. I'm a member of the First Church since I was like 18. And I lived in Windsor my entire life. I kind of lead the creative worship team. I have a background in photography. I went to school for fine art photography. I've worked in, photography and design, in managing creative projects, product development. So I have a pretty wide range of background just in creating, different projects and having a vision. And my photography over this COVID and before that is really, it started out as work, but now it's my passion. So I have, and this has been an opportunity for me to not only offer the gifts that I have, but really develop my own photographic passions, which has been just pure joy, pure joy.
Wonderful. Well, what a set of skills that you have, Nicole, at your church. How wonderful. So I'm going to show this time lapse, just like it's a minute, a time lapse, so people can see what you did for Roll Down Justice. We have some churches who will be using this as an Easter season. We have it both in a Lent and an Easter version. So there'll be some people who are just now, right now, thinking about what they might do in their spaces. So I'm going to show this video, and then we'll talk about some of the nitty-gritty details. Wow, so amazing. That is so amazing. Now, what I noticed right off the bat is that you have this canvas that is this typical New England congregational church that is a white and lots of angular lines. And what you did in that space was just to really bring it, it's a canvas, and you brought it to life in a different way. And I could see that you had several, probably some hardware that's already installed to help you do those kinds of things. So I want to hear from you all about that. But let's start from a design standpoint. I want to hear how the ideas came to fruition about exactly how you would take our, we give folks just some ideas, use fabric, use strips as a waterfall, hang it from wherever you can in your space. So let's talk about the design meeting where you said, okay, how are we going to do this? What's our interpretation in our space? So whoever would like to talk about that process.
Right. Well, I think, I'll start, because I guess it started with me, first of all, trying to figure out what we would do for a series. And I did research and I looked at your stuff, and then I looked in all of the boards, and, I do this sort of looking at what's out there, so that when I come to the designers, I can sort of say, okay, this is the idea, and I pitch the idea, and then this is what excites me. What do you think? And then Laurel usually has a lot to say about the visuals, and then Maureen always we have to make sure we can do it. And Maureen figures out how we can do it. But I think it starts with, I guess, we've only been doing this for a few years, I should say. Maybe a year before COVID, we started and doing what we call creative worship stuff. And then during COVID, we were mostly online, so we were basically focused on the chancel. But our original idea pre-COVID was that the meeting house, which we call our New England meeting house, is that it should be it's like you're part of the art. So you're entering the art space, and it should be 3-dimensional, and it should cause you to look up and look around and to experience it as a aha, wow, or, that it's not the same place the last time you were there.
Right. So would you call it an immersive experience? You want to immerse people in the feel and the color and the textures of the series. Yeah. So
we love that. So we're trying to create, so we know when that happens, it really works. And so we really wanted to do that. So anyway, so I don't know, Laurel, do you want to, you're the step 2 probably in the process.
I'm trying to remember. Some of the things I was thinking about was the motion of rolling down, going up, and then having something that kind of brought your eyes down. And I remember we started out on the edges because, you still had to see from the front to the back and not block people. So this idea of creating something that was really like from the ceiling all the way down, you saw that we didn't end there. It kind of stopped in the middle. But I remember thinking we want to bring you like all the way up and all the way down, and you can experience it when you're sitting in the pews as well as looking up. And then we tried it and it didn't work. And I remember it looked wimpy. And I'm like, well, so that hardware that you talked about, that was something that I engineered. There's some like hardware like way up, and I've got these like pulley things that we engineered that allows us. It started with we created a forest, and we like took like, I don't know, half a tree of dead branches and hoisted it up into the ceiling. So we had this hardware. Like, well, maybe we can do something with that and just create like waves of going across or waves of kind of moving down. That was what the other idea was, to have a wave that kind of brought you down. Like that. But but that was really my focus, is how can we feel movement of water?
Yeah. And I think there's several things that do that. Like you said, there's one of the things that I noticed is that you kind of have 3 layers from top to bottom, and that's the high layer,
Mhm.
the one that's just under the cross,
Mhm.
and then you have the table and font are another
Mhm.
layer, right? So you
Mhm.
have these 3 layers height wise, but then
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
also have the layers going back,
Mhm.
right? And so, and the other thing that I think gives movement, and not being in the space, I don't know what it's
Mhm.
like, but just looking on the screen,
Mhm.
is the textures of the different pieces of fabric create this sense of movement,
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
when they're just still.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so the color and the texture. And I'm sure that Maureen, that is kind of jiving
That's
with
her.
some of the principles that you
Yep.
know about stage set design.
Yes.
That was Maureen's. Maureen was all about the fabric.
I'm the
Sure,
fabric
yes.
lady. Yep. I love fabric. So I really did, and I know from my theater background, you have to have the textures. You needed it. Just, I was in my glory picking out fabric. And we have discovered a few things. I mean, not only do we like to immerse, the attendees, we like to, at least Laurel and I, put our heads together. How can we make it move?
Mhm.
How can we make it kinesthetic? And I will tell you that those streamers of fabric dance when the heat comes on and it rises. They literally,
Right.
Love it.
those sets of streamers are actually backed by organza. So there is a stable piece in the back that we, some of this is actually a little, we morph as we go.
Right.
The reality is, like Laurel said, we have banner poles that go out 2 feet into the space at the highest height. And that's how we started thinking that we'll do 2 feet, the 2 feet width all the way to the floor with these huge streamers of fabric.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that space is so voluminous that it just got squashed.
Yeah.
I didn't do one that was the full length, but I did do a couple of samples that we could try
Mhm.
just of that width, and it just got
Yeah.
lost. And literally, but we still were kind of going with it. And then before I took scissors to it, I texted Laurel. I'm like, I'm not feeling that this is a good thing. I said, we need it across the ceiling. If it's rolling down, we want people feeling like it's coming down on them, not they're going to brush into it, sitting next to it. It needs to be coming down, and so I reconfigured. I'd already spent my wad on that. So I had to make what I bought work.
Mhm.
And that's,
Yeah.
kind of really was sort of a last minute. And then even in the space, there were still things, we kind of cut into the organza so it wasn't rigid, so that it had flex and
Right.
the
Right.
whole thing could move. And so
Yeah, and this is something that I just find over and over again, is that you don't know until you, like you said, sample. And that's
Right.
really important, is that you do enough of it
Right.
to see, is this going to work?
Right.
Do I need to tweak it in some way? Is this fabric or this material going to act the way I thought it was going to act? Because it doesn't always do that.
Right. Right.
And what is the feeling in the space? So, all of those things, which leads to, it's important to start early, like not Saturday before, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to learn how to do that, but it's about trusting the team. I think that when we first started doing it, we had kind of panic attacks as the time got closer, like, and then as we trusted that it would come to us.
Yeah.
And now we just know that it will, but we also know we have to start early enough so that we have time to go through that creative process. But I will say one of the things we've had to learn related to what Maureen was saying is understanding the scale of the space, and that you really, a lot of, I think some of the installations that I see and that maybe we started with were so small, you had to be so close to sort of appreciate the little details. And we realized that you go big or go home, you gotta, you can't soft pedal it. If you want it to have an impact, it really has to be big, and to scale it to the space. So, and then we also, during COVID, we started live streaming. And so we have these cameras, and that was how we were able to do the time lapse. But we also have to think about what it looks like on the camera.
That's right.
And so we've learned how to do that. And so how to create the effect of scale with cameras, which again, I'm not saying we're an expert, but we're just we've tried different things and we've learned. Yeah. But I do think
the same principles apply when you're looking at through the camera lens. You're creating, you have a frame that is the picture, and then the camera itself can help people be more or less immersed based on their camera angles and our zoom in and zoom out. And I know that at my partner's church, we've been dealing with training a new live stream camera operator. And so part of what I was working with him about was, getting some of those close-ups, and really the people at home are getting more close-up than some people in the pews. And because you all, I didn't see any screens in that space. So you're not projecting images.
No, we do have screens in the front.
Okay.
Yeah, two screens in the front.
Okay, I just missed that. But
yeah, that's okay.
One of the things about scale that actually is helpful, and I just want to say this for those churches who are going to say, we don't have the budget to do big scale, right? So you can go smaller if you are projecting images onto more real estate, which is screens, and getting some beautiful close-up photography of the visual installation. And then you're actually putting your whole picture is not only what you concretely 3D have in the space, but also what is in that projected real estate. And that can really help for folks who, just can't afford, 100 yards of material every series. That kind of thing. Yeah. Right. So this is also good. I want to ask some really technical questions, hardware questions. So Laurel, you were talking about having rigged some hardware for pulleying, and actually drop line systems is, what they're known by actually out in the world. And I want to remind folks who are watching this that we have an interview and a diagram of some of that hardware from Alexandra Childs, who installs these drop line systems in churches. And so we have a video of her talking about that and a diagram. So you can refer to that if you're really interested in figuring this out. But I want to hear, Laurel, about your hardware and what you rigged. And really what Alexandra does is, eye hooks in particular places, and the boat cleat kind of thing that you just do this with the rope. And she uses kite string because it can be very strong and hold up to like 300 pounds. And then placing that in the architecture in a way that you can then hang various things like you all did. Does this sound familiar, or
That's it. That's really it. It's a boat cleat, an eye hook way up high, and then the string, the I don't know what kind of string it is. It could be kite string. It's kind of nylon. On the end of it, it's got like a clasp, those clasp things tied onto it. And then you take that, and there's enough rope on it to let the clasp thing go all the way down to the ground. And then I've got a clothesline that's measured out with the little hooks on the end of it. So we let the rope down all the way, down to the floor, hook the clothesline up with everything attached to it. And then two people were like hoisting. It goes up, hits the eye hook. And then you do the boat cleat thing.
Right, you tie it off.
And then you tie it off, and then wind up all the, 100 extra feet of rope to get it all the way up and all the way down so people don't trip on it at the end.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really It's not expensive. I mean, the hardest part
No.
is just getting the eye hooks in the right place, however you can get
Yeah,
up.
a lot of ladder work. A lot
Yeah,
of ladder
ladder
work to
work.
get to that.
And
And-
one big thing, do you have some weights on your, I don't know what those things are called, carabiners or whatever, the clippy things? A couple of churches that I have talked to have said that they didn't put enough weight on that hook. And so at one point they got it up there and they couldn't get it to come down.
Oh,
It was
we
not
never
weighted
we never let the end go all the way up. It only
Okay.
goes, when you're done with it, you hook it back down low.
Yeah.
And then it goes down to the ground and it goes
Mhm.
up to the top, but the weight of the thing that's suspended on it brings it back down. And then the resting point is, it's hooked where the boat hook is.
Now there you go. That's it. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the discipline to always,
Yeah,
when
that's a
not
big
in
deal.
use, hook it down by the boat cleat. Yeah.
If it goes up, that means I have to get a ladder.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of ladder work already, and
Go
hoisting the
fishing.
ladders
Right.
all the way up there is a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
But
I
once it's
will add-
installed, it's so many different ways that you
Exactly.
can use it.
Mhm.
That's right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if other churches have this, like, you're drilling eye hooks into your historic architecture,
They are
and
everywhere now. Everywhere there's eye hooks. I'm like, hey, we got eye hooks.
they
It's
don't
fine.
notice them. They never
They don't
notice
even see 'em.
them, and they love the installations. And we just did it, and it was okay.
Yeah.
And one of our installations last year, anyway, the adhesive that was supposed to come right off didn't come off. It took the some of the plaster off the walls, and we're like, you know what, this space is meant to be used.
Mhm.
It's meant for worship. And I think it was Maureen spackled it up and painted it over, and
Can't
it was
even
fine.
tell.
So it's just
It's
kind of
fine.
like it's not a museum. It's a living, right?
Mhm.
It's a place for people to gather and to worship God. And it's okay if it gets a little messy. And I think it's more beautiful now than it ever has been,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
really.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, amen, amen, amen. It really, our spaces are, the main thing is liturgy, which literally means the work of the people. Right. And so it's not about the building, it's about how the building can facilitate the worship of the people. And yes, we want to maintain them in a beautiful way, but if we don't do things like this that can enhance our experience of the story, of the narrative, we lose out on some of this artistry that really draws us in. And Maureen, you know this from theater, right? I mean, it's just what we're trying to do is immerse people in a world that contains a message in which we can be steeped. And the more that speaks to the different centers of the brain that are taking in senses, the more memorable that will be.
Well, I also have some background in education. So, I mean, it's really a multisensory approach. And,
That's right.
some things I obviously, with my background, I'm a very, very visual person. So, some people are just auditory. Some are, don't need any of that. They just want to read the word, but I think that this just enhances it. And it's just another level of reaching people. And that's one of the reasons I think also the kinesthetic part is so important. As well, we always, we do the full gamut. So we pretty much always have some sort of a project that engages
Right.
those participating, that either maybe they have to bring something forward during the service that is actually added to the installation while it's up, or so it's a full, I mean, Nicole does an unbelievable job, just wrapping it tight with, like really the theme carries through.
Yeah.
Laurel does the graphics for the screens and videos and all of that. I wanted to back up and just point out one thing when you were talking about the hoisting system and all of that. One of the beautiful things we stumbled across that Laurel put in was really actually a staging area. So down low on the pillar, I mean, you can kind of see it in action when we're attaching the panels of streamers, so there is a staging area that we hook that same, line on and eye hooks, and that we can work it there, at a comfortable height. So it's actually hanging, and we're not on ladders doing it. And then we move it forward to hook up to the hoisting. Because you couldn't get the same effect to see how it's going to look if it was laying out flat on the floor, so that's a really,
I want to go back to this and let's find a spot where I'm going to go backwards here.
All right.
So so you all are working.
That's the staging area down low. Yeah.
Yeah. You're working with it down there, and you can really make sure it's all good to go before it goes up. Yeah.
Right. But even with the hoisting system, this one, we did run into a problem of static. So, I mean, we did have them, once they were in their position in-house, we still lowered them and did a little tweaking and, to just, spritz it with a water bottle.
Yeah.
Get rid of the static and so forth, and then run it back up. I mean, the hoisting system works fabulously.
That's great. That's great. So you can always tweak it. Now let's go back to, let me go back to a final. Okay. So here we are. Now we were talking about, adding to, so congregational participation in actually interacting with the visuals. And I know that, there's always some aspect of that in my series that I'm designing. In our materials about roll down justice, we suggest that people write on strips of cloth every Sunday and that be added to the waterfall. Are you all doing that? And where do you add it on?
Yeah. And I just want to say, I really appreciate that you add that to your series, and because it has worked so well for us, and it's like our favorite piece. Well, one of my favorite, just that people, like, they come, you say, this is what we're going to do, and they just do it. So we have the strips of fabric. We did more blues and greens, and they write down something they want to turn over, something want to give up, turn over to God, or we're focusing on social justice, something they're praying for, a justice issue. And so during the prayer time, we use your prayer, the kinesthetic prayer, which is the tight fists and the letting go. And then as we're singing the response, people can come up with their fabric. And so the baptismal font, which is on the right of the screen, you're putting the strip that looks like water in the bowl, water, the baptismal bowl. Yeah. And then after the service, someone from the creative worship team is just pinning onto the font, the drapey, the strips, and adding
freestanding waterfall.
Yes, a freestanding waterfall.
Right.
Yeah. And then we're trying to think about what to do with the strips afterwards. We have some ideas to repurpose them, because everything has to get used again. Yes. But there's something about and they're so powerful, these prayers, these things that people they're on their heart. And I thought, is everyone going to do it the first week, but then that'll be it? No, every week they come up. Yeah. And we have the kids that come to do it as well. And so they're writing things down, and it's just.
And I love that you're putting them in the baptismal font, because that whole series is taking our baptismal vows and connecting them to social justice and our call to social justice. And so it's that the waters that are rolling down are connected to our baptism. And so that's lovely. And I can tell you, this series has been out for a few years, and I can tell you that every church has said, oh my gosh, we had to really think about what we did with these afterwards, because people had so much imbued in that. So I will tell you some things people have done. One is, of course, the blue fabric that's, the majority of it that you all have hanging. I would imagine you could save that, use that for something else. But the stuff that people have written on, a lot of churches made a more permanent wall hanging, not for the sanctuary, but somewhere in their church.
Okay.
And some people have made a a moving banner, like a T-pole, right?
Mhm.
And every time they do a baptism, they
Oh.
process that in. So
Mhm.
that's present now every time they do a baptism.
Right.
Some churches have started putting the name of people who are baptized in with that on that as well. So you start to collect this, this sort of liturgical moving processional piece. So anyway, people have done a lot of things with them, but that's a common question. And it's true because these physical elements get imbued with our prayers, our intentions, and
Right.
they become very meaningful.
This
Yeah.
is somebody's idea. It's like a little origami star
Fun.
that they've started. So I don't know. We're not
So
sure
that's
yet.
made of the fabric?
Made of the fabric. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
So that's an idea, one
Yeah.
idea we have right now,
Yeah.
but we're percolating
There's
it.
no sewing
Anyway.
involved in those.
Wow,
What's
that's
that?
amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you'll make a little how-to video and send it to me so I can post it with this.
Yeah. Not sure yet, but
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'd love to hear that. So I want to just move to a little discussion before we sign off of what it means to you to be working as a team. You know, in the worship design studio, one of the things that I encourage is for people to draw in others in the work of creating worship, because I mean, it's every bit as meaningful, I think, as a discipleship group or a Bible study group or what have you. It's another way to offer up your gifts and to create some bonds with some folks. Now, I noticed you have had a lot more people there helping you than just this small group. So obviously you may do some of what I call it the extended team. So there's like a core team that works on things. And then the extended team of people you draw in when it's time to get her done. Right. So tell me a little bit about your process of being a team, drawing people in, and what that experience has been like.
Laurel, do you want to talk about that? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that when we started that, Nicole mentioned that we started this, a year or so before COVID, and one of our goals was to create a community, create opportunities for people to be creative. I think that was the one one of our original series was God the Creator, and we are all creative. So it was really important for us to make opportunities for people to get together and be creative. And we got such great participation. People were making leaves, but they sat down, they made the greatest leaves, and they made flowers. And we used that to build our wilderness. And then COVID came, and we all had to separate. So we had built up this great kind of energy about being together and having the core. And then we had Sunday after worship, we would have events where they could come in and help build the next section. And so part of the building was us, engineering the schedule to let people build part of it.
Yeah.
So we had to make it big enough so people could be part of the building. And then we had to undo all that and learn how to do it separated and across Zoom and masked. And so we got pretty good at that. And now we've kind of come out of that. And, the way that we, being church is now, because we have a lot of people that only know us on Zoom.
Right.
So now we've come out of that, and we were kind of having to reimagine how we do exactly what you're talking about, making that part of the team. And we were successful. We got people to help with the water. I think this was the first one that we've really had calling all hands to help. So we're starting to reimagine that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the part, I think during COVID, like we talked about this, the word immersive kind of worship space, we couldn't really, if we're online, you don't really get that experience. So we're like, how do we engage people still with art? And so we had well, we made kits and sent those home and had people make videos,
Right.
you know, and then we put videos together, and Laurel just got really good at making videos. And so that we still have that with us, but we don't want it to just be like sitting in the meeting house and watching a screen. We want it. So it's like, we need to do, like Laurel said, it's kind of a yin yang kind of, we're working on that. But we know we can do it, but we don't prefer to do this two-dimensional kind of thing. But
how
yeah.
wonderful that you have people who only know you through Zoom or through your live stream. And, you know, all this year, as we've been coming back in a kind of a hybrid situation, I've been talking about how if you already have this, this habit of creating interactive kinds of things in the space, to continue that, because that helps cross the boundaries between those who are not there. So inviting people to send in their words and then writing those on an actual piece of blue cloth and putting it in, you know, like having a surrogate who puts it there so that they know that their prayers are being put there, or just asking somebody to take a video of themselves writing on a blue piece of cloth at home and having that play, a compilation of that play while people are bringing their things forward. And so you're blurring those boundaries between those at home and those in the space by having those at home show up in the space through your projections in some way. So I think it's kind of yummy stuff. And we're, you know, part of our creativity is just taking what we're doing and saying, okay, always, how do we cross the boundary again and get it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think one of the things that I find really important about the development of our team, though, is that there is like the installation always goes through all of these phases, and there are a lot of ideas and not many of them make it to the end. So we've learned to sort of be able to critique without taking it personally. And that was hard at first, to how to be open creatively together. And that was hard. I feel like you can't get there without doing it. But now that we've gone through it, it's like, okay, now how do we bring new people into it who haven't been through all of this? But I think that's also very exciting, because they can see, they love that wow experience. And it's like, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And just to reiterate to new folks who come on, that we will always have more ideas than we can use. That's the nature of group brainstorming. And even if we don't use your idea, just speaking the idea out into the process helps us get to the next idea, which might be the right idea, right? So it's to always keep talking about the creative process and how it's just not linear. It's gonna kind of do this chrysalis mushy thing for a little bit, and then we're gonna figure out what it actually looks like when we start to see the butterfly forming. But it is messy a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes it's not used in this installation, but it might spark something for the next installation.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I like, especially in a brainstorm meeting where you're just beginning to think about it, is to always have somebody who's making notes. And I like to make sticky notes, one idea per sticky, because then whatever we don't use, I put in a place where we can revisit that. And just knowing, okay, my sticky didn't get used, but there it goes in that folder. And we know that sometimes that folder comes back out and we go, oh my gosh, this is perfect for this one.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just so life-giving working on creative teams. It can also, like you pointed out, it can be hard at first to do that. And there are, it's in my book, Think Like a Filmmaker, I talk about that working on a team is not always purely democratic. A filmmaking team actually has heads of departments that have some skill sets to help create some of the more concrete things that then others can help bring to fruition. Because not everybody has all of the skill sets. And people, if we only had people on our teams that could come up with the brilliant ideas, it would be a very small group. So to have people who are like, whatever idea you come up with, just count me in. I'll cut fabric till the cows come home or whatever, So there's different levels of participation. I think that's a beautiful thing. You can be part of this, even if your only skill is cutting in a straight line, semi-straight line.
That's true. I think that's true. I think one of the having Laurel, especially as a I don't know, a real artist or whatever, a trained fine artist, is that she brings this sensibility. That we're not trying to be literal. So some members of the team, you say, oh, we want to do this. Well, they're very let's build the thing in the scripture. And it's like, no. And Laurel is always pushing us back on that.
Yeah.
And but sometimes from my perspective, Laurel will come up with something that's super abstract. And I'm like, but how is that going to work? How am I going to communicate that for 6 weeks? I don't know.
That means what? What are you talking about?
Yeah. So, but that's the back and forth. But I do think we have, from Laurel's sensibility as an artist, we have gotten this not literal. And we want it to suggest waterfall, but we don't want it to be a literal waterfall. And we try not to explain it too much. And we try to just let people, again, because you have so many media, that people are getting it, they'll get it. If they don't get it here, they'll get it there. And it's so many layers. It really works. I feel like I don't have to explain, like, okay, so did you guys get the point, the theme of this service? It didn't work. And for us, I just want to, for the roll down justice works really well right now in this time, even though it was made it several years ago, because we've just welcomed a Afghan refugee family a few months ago. And so we focused on that, and welcoming the stranger. And, I tweaked I changed a few of the scriptures and things like that, but that really worked. We focus on the social justice issues that we're dealing with right now. And I love that series lends itself to that. Yeah,
that's right. And that's what we want for folks to do, is to tweak what's there, because your context, that what's right there in front of you. And that's part of the artistry, right? So even though I put out these concrete scripts on paper, I don't believe that they are set in stone in any way, shape, or form, right? It's still, I just hand them to the creative team that you are, and you go, okay, let's take this. It's just a part of the media, right? And let's take this and make it our own. And I love that. And I also love what you said about literalism. It's a very fine line, and it's hard to get for some folks who haven't studied art or haven't been exposed to a lot of different artistic experiences. But one of the ways that I describe it is that, the visual, if we're talking about the visuals, they're not in isolation. This is not an art gallery where you're just going to come in and look at it. It's set in a context. And there are words, there's plenty of words in the liturgy and in the music that are going to add to that. And so we don't have to over-explain anything because it's set in the context of dialogue with the other art forms. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. That's how it works for sure.
Yeah.
In practice. Yeah.
Well, you all are doing an amazing job of that. And I'm just so grateful for the time that you have spent with me and with the rest of the Worship Design Studio subscribers, just learning more about what it means to be a team, to work as a team, to create art together, ritual art, right? We're all ritual artists, I call it. and that, you know, you can involve people at different levels and utilize people's gifts in the best way, because it's really about spiritual formation. And we don't want to add stress to people's life. We want to add delight and depth to their lives. And so they come in at whatever level they can, whether that's spritzing water on cloth or actually designing the thing and putting the hardware in. You know, everybody can bring different things to it. So thank you so very much for all you're doing where you are and for sharing that with the rest of us.
Well, and thank you, because you are a big inspiration for our team.
Absolutely.
When we first started a few years, we read your book, we went on retreat together. We really do use it. I mean, I definitely use it as a model, and you really have been inspirational. And when we got the message you wanted to talk to us, it was like we were talking to a movie star. It was like, it was so, I don't know. It's like Marcia.
Well, just to make you feel better, I'm sitting here.
Marcia does it this way. Marcia, we talk about you like we know you, but now it's like, now we've actually talked to you. So,
oh well, thank you. It does my heart good, and it does help encourage me to continue the work, to hear those things. So thank you very much for that. But I will take myself down a notch and say, I'm actually sitting here with my pajama bottoms on the and maybe that's very movie star, I don't know, but oh, it's such a delight to talk to you, friends, and keep sending us pictures of other installations, what have you. Would love to share that with others. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.